Okay, here we are again. VK3SL. This is a test transmission on 160 metres, 2 metres, and also the broadwave audio stream, which can be found on my QRZ page. So if you're a radio amateur or not, you can look that up. Just look up VK3SL on QRZ.com and then you'll see the links and details and information. Well, this is the last program for a while. It's going to be at least 3 weeks before I'm back on board. So that's a bit of a forewarning to all the thousands of people out there who listen to these test transmissions. Not. Anyhow, we'll see what happens. Cobbled something together tonight. Is quite a few things I had in mind. It was a bit of a sort of contemplating a wrap-up session today. And, of course, celebrating some of the wonderful uploads that I've found of late. So, yes, a few tangents to explore. Well, let's get the ball rolling, and we'll hear Mr. Ted Weems and his orchestra and a fab track called Slappin' That Bass, VK3SL.
Oh, slap, slap, slap that bass. He's getting hot, no time to waste. Instrument you hear in every band that used to be played with a bow, but now it's played by hand. It's against all music rules, all music schools may say, but I don't give a rap. I love the way they slap that grown-up baby today. Do I fall for the little fiddle man? Not at all, but I'm off my noodle when someone is slapping the bass. On my soul, I must take a lash and be self-controlled. Never have it when I see someone slapping the bass. It may look out of place in a swell organization, but folks, without a bass, there isn't a bit of foundation. Oh, me, oh my, but it's pleasing to the ear, and I fly right to heaven when I hear someone slapping the bass. It's the man who slaps the bass. Oh, slap that big fiddle for me. He never rosens up his bow, yet he always stops the show. Oh, slap that big fiddle for me.
Ted Weems and the orchestra from 1930, April 1930, recorded in Chicago. Slap That Bass. Heard Country Washburn as the bass player, slapping away, and who was the singer? It was Mr. Parker Gibbs, of course. He was the front man for the Ted Weems Orchestra for quite a few years. And very distinctive vocal style. I love the Ted Weems Band. They're a very colourful group and really exciting arrangements and excellent musicianship. They're one of the bands who actually did play with dynamics. Yay, so let's continue. 20s Mania. Yes, as we spoke about last week, Prozoot is back, and there's been a plethora of offerings this week. So much material, and a lot of it's been really interesting to listen to because it's non-mainstream recordings he's chosen to upload, including some bands I'd never heard of and some surprises. And this next one is no exception. It's is it next one? Yes, it is. I'll play that next and I'll go backwards. Yeah, so we hear Vern Buck. Now, it's another Chicago band. He had a residency at one of the theatres. I can't find, my iPad has just died and I can't look anything up, so I just guess. Yeah, he had a residency in one of the theatres in Chicago. He was a band which was well established but didn't record much. In fact, I think they only made one recording. That's My Suppressed Desire, and then a few takes which were unissued of other songs. Now, Prozoot seems to have access to to these unreleased masters, and so we'll hear a couple of Vern Buck's recordings, starting with My Suppressed Desire. And then he seemed to cover a few of the Coon Sanders tracks as well. So we might sort of zip around a little bit. But look, a very slick ensemble, a different sound to a lot of the mainstream dance bands. I figure it's a bigger group. It may have been a theatre orchestra. And the instrumentation is a little bit more luscious and string melody oriented. So different types of orchestration evident in this performance, but I really like it. I think it sounds fantastic. And so it's another take on 20s Mania. The soloists aren't great, but the ensemble playing is outstanding. So yeah, let's have a listen to My Suppressed Desire. And this is with Vern Buck and his orchestra care of Mr. Prozoot. This is VK3SL testing.
Desire. No one knows my suppressed desire. I suppose that you'd like to know who she is, but I'll never tell. Here's the reason, it's plain to see. She just doesn't belong to me. Now you know why she is my suppressed desire. If you have somebody you love secretly, then that's the secret of it all, you see. Oh baby, I'm so happy when I retire. My heart flares like a blazing fire while I'm dreaming about my suppressed desire.
Yes, I'd love to hear the violins in the forefront there. And some very lyrical arrangements featuring Bill Chandler and the orchestra of Vern Buck. Now, there are another couple on the same site, so I reckon we'll continue. I'll have a listen to Smiling Skies. Smiling Skies is one of those pieces sort of in a minor key, and but with a positive message. We heard Happy Feet last week, which is another example of that genre, Depression's era. And, an interesting sort of double message. And so let's have a listen to Smiling Skies, and then I reckon we'll just keep the ball rolling here, because the other two, this track, incidentally, to my best knowledge, was unreleased. I might be wrong, but Smiling Skies and What a Girl, What a Night are both tunes featured by Coon Sanders Nighthawks, and they're covered by Vern Buck in this instance. So, yeah, not a prolific recorder by any standard, but they had a residency at one of the big venues in Chicago in the late 20s. A little bit of there's not much information about Mr. Buck online. Took a bit of searching just to get a general picture. Anyhow, enjoy these. It's a fabulous orchestra, and the transfers are amazing. I don't know if they come across like this on air. Possibly not quite the same with the amount of compression I'm using, but they're really transparent. They sound incredible, and I urge you to have a listen to them on YouTube. Just type in Prozoot, and you'll see his massive playlist. So recommend these wholeheartedly. But here's a sample to whet your appetite. VK3SL.
And then you made like a song that I knew couldn't be true without you, dear. You brought me the heavens of blue, sunshine above, smiling through, smiling because, dear, of you. I used to be lonely and weary, things used to be gloomy and dreary, but ever since you have been near me, I've heard my bluebird, it's true, singing a song about you. What in the world would I do, dear, if I didn't have you?
Now, this is interesting. Something is... Well, I'll just put on the brakes for a second. Now, I sampled this earlier today on my way to walking to work. I listened to it, and that track wasn't on it. So this has been submitted, I think, with that track. It's You. Now, it says here, there's a bit of information being put up as well. That's an unissued test. As I mentioned, there's a couple of these tracks are Smiling Skies, which we'll hear shortly, is also an unissued test, but in between we have What a Girl, What a Night, which is obviously the reverse side to My Suppressed Desire. So, yeah, does that make sense? So, yeah, we've just heard You. Don't know who the vocalist was. Next we'll hear What a Girl, What a Night, and then Smiling Skies to finish. Now, there is a little bit of a preamble here. This has been put up since I checked it earlier, and I'll bring the microphone over to the computer and I can read this out. It says here that did you notice the trumpet playing on that last recording? It was fantastic. Really, the presence and the edge to that performance is just so alarming here in the booth. I don't know if it came out that way on the air or on the stream, but I was marvelling at that trumpet playing, and at the same time I read the following. It says here, Mr. Project writes, I have the strongest feeling that the fine trumpet work featured on these sides is by a 19-year-old Frank Zinzer. And he was a protege of Bix and was subbing for him at the age of 15. And most of Zinzer's commercial recordings were done with the Max Fischer Orchestra and Gus Arnheim. And you see photos of him in the band on Max Fischer YouTube posts. Frank could imitate Bix with the most subtle of phrasing and technique. He was a brilliant chameleon, adapting to any style required. And he was hired as first trumpet at Paramount Pictures in 1932 and was there until the early 50s. You can hear his hot trumpet on What a Perfect Combination and The Kid from Spain for Sam Goldwyn, which anyone's been to our film nights would have seen that film. And in 1928, Zinzer was recording at Columbia in Chicago with Max Fischer. It's very likely he was borrowed for this session. Well, that's an interesting summation there by Mr. Prozut, and a bit of added information to these very rare recordings of Mr. Vern Buck. Yes, Vern Buck and his orchestra. So, let's move on. What a Girl, What a Night. next, Smiling Skies.
Just look at those smiling skies. Each flower knows what bliss is. Each hour April kisses come out of those smiling skies. What's the use of hurrying, scurrying, worrying won't do a thing but make you cry. So come on, be happy, don't be gloomy. So happy, listen to me. Just look at those smiling skies.
Okay, that was Vern Buck and his orchestra. Recorded in 1928. Two records. We heard both sides of both records. One was an unissued take and recorded in Chicago. And a very, very fine band. And it's a shame they didn't make any other recordings other than that. But it sounds from Mr. Prosert's remarks it could have been. They may have hired a lot of other instrumentalists who perhaps were contracted to other bands, so there may have been commercial reasons why they didn't actually record more often. But anyhow, fantastic. It's great to discover new things, and it's with these prolific uploads, I'm finding a lot of material that wasn't on my horizon at all, and I thought I knew something about 20s dance band music. Well, there's a lot more out there. There's a phenomenal amount of music out there. It's amazing. Let's have a listen to That's Her Now. This is another piece I'm aware of, recorded by the Six Jumping Jacks. I had no idea that anybody else had recorded this. And yeah, again on a Columbia. Nice, clean, laminated pressings, which Mr. Prosert does masterful transfers with. Let's have a listen to That's Her Now from 1929. Ernie Golden Orchestra with Eddie Willis. Got that one right. VK3SL.
now. Do I love her, boy, and how? I take pleasure in announcing that's her now. Yes, sir, I'm set now. Got a lucky break somehow. I take pleasure in announcing that's her now. If I act cuckoo, I've got a reason to be. Just take a look who has gone and tumbled for me. It won't be long now, gonna take that certain vow. I take pleasure in announcing that's her now.
Yes, we're testing on 160 metres and 2 metres and streaming online. And this test transmission examines the wonderful, transparent recordings reprocessed by Mr. Prozert. And we heard... how about the roundness and the tuba playing there? I mean, that was incredible. You hear the edge, you hear the transients, you hear the body and the sound. Somehow he's able to sort of separate the mush that seems to sort of glue these old recordings together, and the instrumental groups stand out. So something's going on. I'd be fascinated to know if he's using some of that new generation of intelligent EQ that's out there, re-equalizing these things, and they can be done with it can be done in a variety of ways, using waterfall display visually, but also can be done with algorithms. And yes, it's great to hear these in unprecedented clarity, to be honest. So yeah, we heard the tuba playing. It had so much punch to it, so much edge. Sounded excellent in the speakers in here. Yes, so what else? We've got... yes, this was good to find. Another one of Mr. Prozert's offerings is a Bix recording, or in fact a few recordings featuring Mr. Bix on the Okayer label. Again, pristine copies, almost unheard of. And in this instance, we hear the Frankie Trumbo Orchestra with a variety of vocalists, and including one track that I listened to obsessively as a teenager. I haven't heard it since until I suddenly struck upon it, and I've listened to it obsessively this week. This is what happens, you see, with people, midlife crisis, reliving your youth. So, yeah, this tune's called I Like That, and it's got a great muted big solo, but just a very beautiful arrangement, fabulous tune. And yeah, and look, you hear Min Lee Brook is the bass saxophonist in this, and instead of using a tuba, they use a bass saxophone. And the bass sax has a real sort of edge to it, a real grain to the sound. You hear it, and it just drives it completely invigorates the recording, I think. So let's enjoy I Like That with Frankie Trumbo and his orchestra, and I think the vocalist is Irving Kaufman on this, and of course it features Mr. Bix. I think Andy Seacrest is in this as well, but predominantly features Bix. Take it away. Yes, and I wonder who picked up the oboe at the end for that little ride out there. That was a tune called I Like That, and it was Frankie Trumbauer and his orchestra. They were a side group from the Whiteman Orchestra, who just, Whiteman allowed his players, his best soloists, to form small groups and record under his auspice. So that's an example of Whiteman mainstream players, including Bill Rank. There was a great Bill Rank trombone solo towards the end of that. From those sessions, led by Frankie Trumbauer, the saxophone player, C melody saxophone player, there is also an early Bing Crosby amongst these. So I reckon we can cue that one up. I've got to find where it is. 557. So I've got to sort of zip around here with the red line. 557. Right. I think we're almost there. And we'll have a listen to Bing Crosby. And it actually features Frankie Trumbauer himself. He does sort of he plays the voice of the protagonist, and Crosby does the vocal line. And, this has got a big solo to die for. It's amazing. One of his great solos in this particular recording. Anyhow, it's lovely to hear it all transferred so well. So, we'll hear Mississippi Mud, Bing Crosby with Frankie. Can't get ahead of myself here. Frankie Trumbauer and his orchestra. VK3SL testing. Whoops, that was the end of the last track. Here we go.
Singing in this here record.
Mr. Tram, there's going to be singing presently of a sort.
Well, you know, I ain't heard no singing yet.
You just get a load of this on you. Lord,
oh, is that it?
Well, that's part of it. That's the prelude. Now we sing. When the sun goes down, tide goes out, the darkies gather round and they all begin to shout. Hey, hey, Uncle Dud.
Oh, you mean your old Uncle Dud down on home there with his feet in that mud?
I don't mean Uncle Dud's papping his feet's really in the mud. And what a dance do they do? Lordy, how I'm telling you, they don't need no band. They keep time by clapping their hands, just as happy as a cow chewing on a cud when the darkies beat their feet on the Mississippi mud. They don't need no band. They keep time by clapping their hands, just as happy as a cow chewing on a cud when the darkies beat the feet.
So you done jumped up and got me beating my feet.
As the darkies beat the feet on the Mississippi mud.
Yes, we heard a very young Bing Crosby there with Mississippi Mud, Frank Trumbauer and the orchestra. All right, a few selections from Mr. Prozoot tonight, and I haven't even bothered winding up the turntable and sharpening the Thorn Stylie. Yeah, it just went straight off the boredom. But anyhow, it's great to celebrate all these uploads. They've captured my imagination, that's for sure. Okay, next cab off the rank is a pianola offering. I figure that I've got to use this pianola, otherwise it's just going to be completely non-functional and another big piece of space junk in this room. So I found a role I haven't played on yet. One called, famous song actually, called, I think it's called Mr. Sandman. Yes, it's not Japanese Sandman, it's Mr. Sandman, the 50s song. So I think that's it. So we'll have to switch over to the other microphonics and we'll have a listen to the Foster, a Foster pianola from 1924, playing a piano roll from a few years later. So let's go to the SM57, which is on the other side of the room. I'll switch that on. I fade that up and you'll hear a bit of room ambience now. Hello. And I will fade this one out and then we'll make our journey to the other side of the room, into the transmitter hall and beyond to where the piano is situated. VK3SL. Okay, here we are. Take the headphones off that microphone. There we have it. I think that's all okay. Can I see myself on the crow? Yes, it's all right. So, pointing it in the right direction, the microphone that is, and I'm going to climb over and let's see what happens. Let's see my workout for the day. Climb back over the furniture, check the transmitter and make my way back over. So we just heard Mr. Sandman. That's the famous song that the I think Mills Brothers made a hit out of that. Better go over to the other microphone. Okay, back to our regular microphonics now, and we, as announced, we had our little pianola offering there. Okay, next is something from the OTR ranks. Now I'm going to let this announce itself. It's a bit of a quirky offering, and well, it features someone who had the best or the worst comb over that you could ever imagine. I think some people might know who I'm talking about. Okay, so let me see. Here we have it.
There's a brand new one for Eddie Grant from 3SA's present pop survey. Do you feel my love? 3SA's weather will be a top of 32 degrees with a cool change later this evening. At 3SA at the moment, the temperature is 31 degrees.
Size have manufactured quality suits and sports clothes for 52 years. By selling directly to you, they save you $40 on normal retail prices. So save at sales. For a convenient location.
The introduction of FM radio has created an ever-increasing demand for radio announcers. But where do they all come from? Certainly not out of thin air. They all have to start somewhere. And for many young Melbourne radio announcers, this tiny home in Grosvenor Street, East St Kilda, is the starting point. The only hint you get that this is the 3SA Announcers Training Centre is a tiny sign on the front of the house. But over the years, hundreds of young guys have come through here to learn the craft. And the guy who teaches it all to them is Clark Sinclair.
What is taught here is voice production, commercial reading, news reading, and of course program arranging. We edit and present our own local news. We do commercial production. We also have a high concentration here on sports coordination. We do all of that, plus of course the work at the panel, at the console.
What does that entail?
Well, that entails actually learning how to operate the panel, learning what it's all about, what the panel is all about. You know, it's a bit like driving a car. You need to know the panel, you need to know the switches, you need to know the controls back to front, because while you're doing all of that, you're having to talk at the same time, and the concentration of the two make it very difficult.
Clark, what qualifications do the students have to have before you accept them into your training course?
Well, first of all, a good voice, not a brilliant voice, but a good voice, good personality, and a lot of enthusiasm.
Goodness, there must have been some names come through here in the last, nearly 30 years, isn't it? Who are some of the names you've trained?
We've had people here like Brian Martin, the race caller from UZ, George Danes from UZ, Rob Asprey from Channel 10, Mel Walden has been here, and there have been many, many others. Graham Cumming from Channel 9 is another name I bring to mind right off the top of my head.
Mm.
And, of course, Greg Evans. Things haven't really changed much. I'm a little more mellow than usual now.
Oh, I see. Because I remember you were a tyrant to work for when I was here.
Are you interested in finding a reliable, one-stop source of steel building materials?
I think you could stop it there and give more emphasis to the word reliable, because reliable is a point that you're suggesting as that firm or that sponsor you're going to talk about is definitely reliable. So therefore, I believe there should be more emphasis on reliable. So you just try it again next time round and emphasise reliable. Frank?
When you're shopping for tiles, there's nothing worse than setting your heart on a design, then finding it's out of stock. That never happens at a Crosby Tile Centre, because all
the students do the course part-time, and they work several hours to keep 3SA on the air. It operates for 7 hours on Thursday and Friday, and all weekends. Their programs range from pop, jazz and classical music to old-time serials like What's On, even Dad and Dave. The program goes out on a landline to houses in the local area. How long have you been listening to 3SA?
Oh, about 30 years.
30 years, goodness gracious. Why do you like listening to 3SA?
Oh, it's very interesting, really interesting.
Get a few requests on and all that, do you? You must have heard a lot of mistakes over the years with the new announcers.
Yes.
Doesn't worry you at all? No?
Everybody makes mistakes, I suppose.
Brand new one for Eddie Grant now on 3SA. Do You Feel My Love? 20 to 11.
Grenville, why do you want to become a radio announcer?
Well, I was at a bit of a loose end when I finished Form 5. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I'd thought about being a radio announcer before, but I always thought that kind of thing you didn't do.
What kind of thing?
Well, in the media or something, if sort of those people weren't real or they're only on television. And then my parents met somebody who'd done the course, and so they got in contact with Clark, and I came down and I was interested. Been uphill all the way from there.
How old are you now?
I'm 17 now, 18 this year.
And when do you anticipate getting a job in the country?
Oh, I don't know. Clark says maybe 12 months.
I get calls from all over Australia, and particularly in Victoria and, of course, Melbourne, from radio stations wanting people, wanting announcers, wanting DJs to do a variety of shifts. And then we make up a tape, an audition tape, which is usually straight off the air program here at 3SA, and we send that, and that is a sample of the person's work, and the manager or program manager hears the work and decides yes or no whether the person has the job or not.
So there's actually a follow-through there from you too?
Right, yes, because I believe if I'm going to train people, I've got to get them jobs.
What do your parents and your mates say when you tell them you want to become a disc jockey?
Well, my parents are pretty rap because they can say, oh, my son's on radio, and Dad always brags about it, but you've got to wait a while until I actually get there. I know that. And my mates, they respect me and they're just proud of it.
Clark Sinclair has recently been awarded a British Empire Medal for his services to the radio industry. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are thankful for that. Wonder if I can still do it. Let's see, headphones on, record on. This is Split Ends on 3SA. Huh? Oh, wrong speed. Nothing's changed.
That's a whole lot.
Well, what do you think of that? Now, I think we can't have that without an expose on 3SA without something of their elite brigade of announcers.
3SA Melbourne, we're 8:60 on the dial. It's now 10 minutes past 12. Forecast for tomorrow is fine and mild throughout, and top temperature of 21 degrees here in Melbourne. Daniel Boone. What a beautiful Sunday. Daniel Boone was big back then in 1972. Buckley's exciting sale continues with lots of incredible savings for you. 3SA Melbourne, we're 8:60 on the dial. This is Don Trennery. It's 12:15.
Pink and glorious.
15 and a half minutes after 12. Foreigner hitbound here at 3SA Melbourne, and you're as cold as ice. Looks like a big one for Foreigner. You're as cold as ice to me. 3SA Melbourne, we're 8:60 on the dial. It's now 20 minutes past 12. Hi, this is Don Trennery with you right through till 2 o'clock this morning. It's now 21 minutes past 12. Here's the Beatles from Abbey Road. Underneath the Sea in an Octopus's Garden. The Beatles from 1969 in the Abbey Road album and the Octopus's Garden. 3SA Melbourne, 23 minutes past 12.
3SA Local News.
This is 3SA Southern Cross Local News with Don Trennery reporting. Brighton Council has referred the proposed development of 14 elderly persons units back to committee.
Michael Suss, Managing Director of the Travel Bag Proprietary Limited in Balaclava and Moorabbin, has just returned from the Soviet Union.
Caulfield High School is to get a new library and science room.
This has been 3SA Southern Cross Local News. 3SA Melbourne, we're 8:60 on the dial. It's now 25 and a half minutes after 12. Dan Hill with a brilliant ballad here at 3SA Melbourne.
This has been 860 Radio, 3SA's local news, time presently at 5.5 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock.
3SA with Graham Parker and his Rumour there, giving us the New York Shuffle on 3SA Melbourne, the nation's top station. It's 8.5 minutes past 1 o'clock.
Have a bite of fun, have a cherry ride.
860 Radio, 3SA. 3SA Melbourne, it's 10 minutes past 1 o'clock.
Beautiful new song for Randy Edelman on 3SA. It's 29 minutes after midnight. That's Take My Hand. The current 3SA temperature, a cool 6 degrees.
You know what we're munching. Brock-off Date Luncheon, ideal for munching.
Golden, golden, 3SA.
Bob Lind out of 1966 on 3SA with 1966, that's 12 years old, and I can remember the original. Makes you feel old, doesn't it? 860 on the dial, that's us. 3SA Melbourne, it's 25 and a half minutes away from 1. Brian Woodford, they've got the deals.
3SA.
Hey, I knew the bride. Dave Edmonds from 3SA's present pub survey. Yes, marriage. And if your wife nags you too much, there's only one thing to show her, and that's a breathtaking sight. That's your fist. 3SA Melbourne, it's 21 minutes away from 1.
860 Radio, the better sound in radio. It's 5.5 minutes away from 1 o'clock.
To relieve the pain of rheumatism.
5 minutes away from 1 on 860 Radio, 3SA Melbourne. bringing back Mama Cass Elliot from the past November 69.
I was so captivated by that, I missed the ending. Well, there's a lot more where that came from. There's another source of 3SA material which I'll exploit on a future test mission. So, yes, and of course there's a very famous party tape which will have to be aired at some point, maybe on another forum where it's regularly aired. So, yes, 3SA getting a Guernsey on this test transmission, our Radio Nostalgia feature. Okay, well, we're going to sort of move into a little bit of more of an esoteric zone now. In recent weeks, I sort of enjoyed playing a few philosophical songs from the 60s, songs that sort of a bit thought-provoking, usually in a minor key and usually a bit ambient in their nature. Stuff like Sounds of Silence with Simon and Garfunkel, and last week I played Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now. And so in that vogue, I actually stumbled on the original performance of The Windmills of Your Mind. Now, this is performed by Noel Harrison, but I thought I'd follow it on with the famous Dusty Springfield version of the song, and there's a contemporary version that's come out only a couple of years ago by a singer called Sin Egg, Ms. Egg. So let's have a trio of Windmills of Your Mind. I love the words of the song, and it's sort of it's one of those songs that it really spells the spirit of the time, I suppose you could say. So let's have a listen to The Windmills of Your Mind. This is VK3SL. This is a test transmission on 160 metres, 2 metres, and also streaming live on the Broadwave streaming service.
Like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on an ever-spinning reel. Like a snowball down a mountain or a carnival balloon, like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon. Like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space. Like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. Like a tunnel you can follow to a tunnel of its own, down a hollow to a cavern where the sun has never shone. Like a door that keeps revolving in a half-forgotten dream, or the ripples from a pebble someone tosses in a stream. Like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space. Like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. Keys that jingle in your pocket, words that jangle in your head. Why did summer go so quickly? Was it something that you said? Lovers walk along the shore and leave their footprints in the sand. Was the sound of distant drumming just the fingers of your hand? Pictures hanging in a hallway and the fragment of a song. Half-remembered names and faces, but to whom do they belong? When you knew that it was over, you were suddenly aware that the autumn leaves were turning to the colour of her hair. A circle in a spiral, a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on an ever-spinning reel. As the images unwind, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind.
Like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on an ever-spinning reel. Like a snowball down a mountain or a carnival balloon. Like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon. Like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face. And the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. tunnel that you follow to a tunnel of its own, down a hollow to a cavern where the sun has never shone, like a door that keeps revolving in a half-forgotten dream, or the ripples from a pebble someone tosses in a stream, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. Keys that jingle in your pocket, words that jangle in your head. Why did summer go so quickly? Was it something that you said? Lovers walk along the shore and leave their footprints in the sand. Is the sound of distant drumming just the fingers of your hand? Pictures hanging in a hallway and the fragment of a song, half-remembered names and faces, but to whom do they belong? When you knew that it was over, you were suddenly aware that the autumn leaves were turning to the color of his hair, like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on an ever-spinning reel, as the images unwind, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your
round like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on an ever-spinning reel, like a snowball down a mountain or a carnival balloon, like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. Like a tunnel that you follow to a tunnel of its own, down a hollow to a cavern where the sun has never shone, like a door that keeps revolving in a half-forgotten dream, or the ripples from a pebble someone tosses in a stream, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. Keys that jingle in your pocket, words that jangle in your head. Why did summer go so quickly? Was it something that you said? Lovers walk along the shore and leave their footprints a song, half remembered names and faces, but to whom do they belong? When you knew that it was over, you were suddenly aware that the autumn leaves were turning to the color of his hair. Keys that jingle in your pocket, words that jangle in your head. Why did summer go so quickly? Was it something that you said? Lovers walk along the shore and leave their footprints in the sand. It's the sound of distant drumming, just the fingers of your hand. Pictures hanging in a hallway and the fragment of a song. I've remembered names and faces, but to whom do they belong? When you knew that it was over in the autumn of goodbyes, for a moment you could not recall the color of his eyes. Like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on an ever spinning reel. As the images unwind, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind.
Yeah, we heard a few versions of Windmills of Your Mind, the last one being Sin Egg, Ms. Egg, singing quite a beautiful song, 60s anthems. Well, not really anthems, are they? They're reflective songs from the 60s. They're thought-provoking. Now, let's move into the next phase. I got a great email this morning from Mr. Parker, who may be listening. Although he does have early mornings these days, so maybe not. But yeah, he sent me an email about a performance artist, a concept artist called Amanda Christie, who's quite interested in the demise of shortwave radio. And she's a cellist. And she has done a lot of sort of concept performance art, installation art type things, looking at the lamenting the loss of shortwave radio, and particularly the Canadian shortwave services, international shortwave service, which was all disassembled. And she's got on her website a whole lot of pictures of the mast falling, and she's made sort of artistic expressions using the sounds and environmental sounds of the station being demolished. It's quite interesting. So, yeah, I thought I'd play a little bit of her Requiem for Radio. And so she's got this up. It's a Vimeo file put up on her site. So it's all a bit weird and wonderful. And it's, the first part of it involves a whole lot of people sitting at a big long table in a venue, each with a shortwave receiver. And they must be all connected to antennas and so on, so they're all intercepting different stations and everything's sort of mixed in, and it's a statement. And then she sort of starts morphing the sounds and changing them, and creating an ambience which fits her ideal. Now, what does she say about this? Here we go. She says, Christy also began using contact microphones to record the sounds of the masts vibrating in the wind, and these droning tones were filtered to create a musical scale, and the masts were finally demolished in 2014. This is the Canadian International Shortwave Service masts, and she's got pictures of them coming down. The masts were finally demolished in 2014, and at the end of the Spectres of Shortwave, Christie uses these drones as an affecting chorus that gradually stills as each mast falls. And it says the unusual nature of Spectre of Shortwave has meant that Christie has had difficulty showing it as too experimental for mainstream festivals, she says, and as too narrative for experimental festivals, she says ruefully. Well, I don't know how well this is going to come across on air, but I seem to recall that when I first started doing these tests, we played a lot of ambient electronic music, so it's probably not that dissimilar. It goes for about 10 minutes or so, so hang in there if it's not entirely to your liking, and because I've got some nice classical offerings afterwards. So let's have a listen to Amanda Christie and her discourse on the demise of shortwave radio. This is called Requiem for Radio, Pulse Decay.
Es Nuestra Señora del Encuentro con Dios. Ay, me tienen que poner el último programa con tantas llamadas, afortunadamente.
Con un recorrido por lo mejor de la música popular cubana. Y ya comienza el sonido
ricochet up, ricochet down, like sleeping stones across the ocean, salt water ground, play.
www.wrmi.net. Send us your comments and reception reports to
Okay, that was the concept piece, the performance art piece called Requiem for Radio, performed by cellist Amanda Christie, yes, and a Canadian artist, and yeah, it's quite an interesting one to watch. There's three people, and they sort of move around quite a large stage area, including a table with a racks of shortwave receivers, which they begin with and end with. It sort of unifies the work, I suppose, and in between there are a whole lot of it's very darkly lit, the whole thing, and there's a series of masts which are to emulate the antenna masts, and where they place their hands on the mast, that varies the pitch, so it's sort of wired up in a way that's very interactive and creates a certain ambience. Some pretty badly out of tune singing, but look, you know, it's all about it's all about an artistic statement. And she says here, although the RCI site is gone, Christie's art is still focused on radio waves. And it says, I've just built a cello that has a loop antenna and AM transmitter instead of a resonating body. I'm looking forward to refining it and composing music for it. So there's a picture of her with her cello, which looks like it's got a magnetic loop antenna instead of a body. Yeah, it's quite a unusual concept. So someone's obviously quite excited about fleshing out themes and making them into artistic statements, themes of the demise of shortwave radio. In this case, it seems to be her main thing. Check out her blog page. Her name is Amanda Christie. Amanda Dawn Christie, it says. So, a Google search will probably reveal, and her blog page, which has got lots of examples and pictures of the antennas coming down and pictures of the station being demolished, and she was very involved with the disassembling of RCI, Radio Canada International. So yes, a little bit of esoteric ambience there. And that's something I used to do a lot of. I should do more. We need some changes of pace, I think, with these transmissions. Got a couple of classical offerings. Before I do that, I just figured it's going to be my last transmission before Christmas, and probably there won't be another one until, probably mid-January even. I can't see myself doing anything to probably be about the 11th or 12th of January, thereabouts. So a bit of a hiatus. I think the problem is the next thing doesn't really fit into the mood. So maybe if you just prepare yourself for a bit of a gear change. I know what I can do. I had this queued up as well. Is something about about concept art, sort of taking the piss a little bit out of concept art, care of Mr. L, and then I'll leave that that'll segue into my little Christmas offering, and followed by some classical music to wind up the show. There we have it. There's a bit of a game plan. Thinking on the fly, as per usual, for these test transmissions. Okay, here we go. And by the way, this is can't think who the guy is here. Doesn't matter. We'll find out soon.
Who do they think they're fooling, Department? A Japanese lady named Yoko Ono is in London demonstrating her Oriental art. She composes music, which according to her sponsor, is diametrically opposed to that of John Cage in philosophy and has no audible sound in the conventional sense. To the ignorant Philistine, uninitiated into the way of instructive auto-destruction, the result is, for want of a better word, silence. Miss Ono, her face almost concealed by her hair, squatted serenely on the floor, while her assistant, Mr. Anthony Cox, a thin and bearded man, drew a big black canvas bag over his head. He said, "You can't see me, but I can see you. I am isolated and can think without interruption." And then Miss Ono joined Mr. Cox in the big black canvas bag, and they disappeared for 20 minutes, during which time they were said to have undressed and dressed again, while a bicycle was slowly pedaled around them. This was called bag piece with bicycle piece for orchestra. In the item called cut piece, Miss Ono sat still and inscrutable while members of the audience took turns to cut bits off her clothes with a pair of scissors. After 40 minutes, she was naked, and Mr. Cox erected a notice which read, "The body is the scar of the mind." Miss Ono banged her head on the stage, and the audience drank green tea. I admire her and her box office clerk for their oriental artistry in keeping a straight face. This is the big city version of the cow with its head where its tail ought to be, that fleeced countless hayseeds at country shows.
Yes, no. I'm walking backwards for Christmas across the Irish Sea. I'm walking backwards for Christmas. It's the only thing for me. I've tried walking sideways and walking to the front, but people just look at me and say it's a publicity stunt. I'm walking backwards for Christmas to prove that I love you. An immigrant lad loved an Irish colleen from a Dublin's Galway boy. He longed for her arms, but she spurned his charms, and she sailed o'er the former way. She left the lad by himself on his own, all alone, a sorrowing. And sadly he dreamed, or at least that's the way it seemed, buddy, that an angel choir to him, an angel choir did the same. I'm walking backwards for Christmas across the Irish Sea. I'm walking backwards for Christmas. It's the finest thing for me. And so I've tried walking sideways and walking to the front, but people just laughed and said it's a publicity stunt. So I'm walking backwards for Christmas to prove that I love you. Thank you. And for an encore,
Hey, I didn't think much of that. I think that my side was better.
get that child out of
Hey,
here.
Right, that needs no introduction, but I thought I'd have to play something a bit Christmassy. So, and the piece before that, thank you to Mr. Long, was Wilfred Thomas providing a description of Yoko Ono and company in one of their concept art pieces. And so, yeah, I've forgotten I had that lined up. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a breakaway segment there because it's sort of... it's hard to sort of return to a quite classical reflective mode now. But look, what I might do is I'll handle it over to Mr. Walford Davies in 1929. We're going to take the time machine back to 1929 and I'll play this off on a real record. And... see what's happening with this. Is it going to take off? No, it's all right. And yeah, look, I'm pleased to have found these. I had lost them for quite some time, and I will continue with this whole series next year. This is one of 12 78s recorded in 1929, and a series on talks on music by the musicologist Walford Davies. And Marjorie Long, I think, is the violinist, and so she demonstrates. The pianist may be Ada Bourne, who's Australian. She concertized with Marjorie Long. Let's have a look. See if there's any information here. Oh, no, so it's Marjorie, not Marjorie Long. It's Marjorie Hayward. Okay, I got that wrong. It's Sir Walford Davies, anyhow, and one of his 12 talks on melody. So I just pulled one of the records off the shelf, and I'll play this now, and this will lead us into a bit of a 20 minutes or so classical segment to the program to wind things up for the year, effectively. So, yeah, we'll have a listen to this. It's quite beautiful, actually. I had a preview before, and I've actually put all 12 discs up some time ago up on YouTube. It didn't record very well. It's very quiet, and I might have to redo it. But... I haven't used the ident tonight. Maybe that gives me a chance to set things up properly. So, what do I need to do? Switch that on, fade up, and we'll work things out in sequence. This is VK3SL, testing on 160 metres, 2 metres, and the broadwave stream.
Try always to give meanings to every melody you hear, even if you hear a mere fragment. Let it call you at once into the unseen world of sound in your minds and give it a meaning as best you can. Have you ever noticed that words have two kinds of meaning, special meaning and general meaning? Even if you uttered such a well-worn word as mother or love in the hearing of 1,000 people, it will have 1,000 special meanings and one general meaning. And in the same way, a common chord can have 1,000 special meanings to 1,000 hearers and yet acquire a general meaning as confident in its way as the general meaning of a word like mother. I think you will be surprised how interesting music will at once become to you if you form the habit of giving each phrase or chord its meaning. What, for example, could this fragment mean to you? Well, you can decide at once. It is cheerful, it is delicate, it has a hopeful rise in it. Then what could this mean? By association and by its very nature, it is wistful, sad, it ponders and broods over things. And what does this kind of thing mean? Isn't it some dogged person sticking at it? It reminds me of a fine old saying, praying to God and hammering away. Melody seems even simpler in its meanings than words. It seems really a mother tongue because languages like Latin, Greek, English, or local languages may die, but it is hard to see how melody can die. Its ways are natural, its words are such as last. The mere words, how are you, I hope you're very well, may mean 100 shades of meaning and be said 100 ways. But has it ever occurred to you that if we greeted each other with a precise scrap of melody and meant it, we should better know each other's state of mind? How are you? I hope you're very well. Compare that with another man who may say to you, how are you? I hope you're very well. Of course, if everybody went about singing, it might make the world rather too much like a comic opera, I wonder. Anyhow, let us remember that while words set in order can convey perhaps more definite meanings than music, yet tones set in order can also convey meaning, and skill, and state of mind, and heavenly imaginings. Have you ever felt like this? Or like this? Or have you ever felt stormy and heroic like Beethoven? Give a meaning to all you hear, and certainly to all the tunes that you invent or try to write, for if you mean what you say, then you are likely to say what you mean simply and well enough for others to enjoy with you. But let us go one step further. It is not enough, surely, just to mean a happy thought. A happy, fugitive thought in music may be lost. It would not have been enough if Bach had said one day, because he just felt like that. He couldn't leave it at that. He had to build it. Why? Just for love, and in order that all other people at all times should comprehend it better, share it, and enjoy the theme with him. Building tunes makes them memorable. Now the ABC of melody making may be put into 3 words, the more easily to remember them: adventure, balance, completeness. We may see how these work in future records.
Okay, whoops, I'll just find that out. Walford Davies, and from 1929, that's a part of his lectures on melody and harmony, musicological lectures pressed onto 12-inch HMVs. And I've got the whole set here, so we'll persevere and play some more of them there. I really like the way he describes things. It's sort of, he directly relates it to the human experience, which I think is incredibly important with music. There's a lot of abstracting music and making it into just an academic thing, and he is all very personable and approachable, I should say. Let's see. We're almost finished. I've got 2 more things to on the list. Over the course of the year, I've played a lot of piano recordings of great artists, great pianists, and I thought I'd put the creme de creme, one of the great recordings, which has been remastered recently, and it's been done really effectively. It's improved it amazingly, to be honest. It's so much more listenable than it was. It was very boxy in its early incarnation. It's the recording of Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 5, The Emperor. I think we've featured The Emperor in different guises before, but we'll hear a bit of it, just a bit of the Allegro. And in fact, I might only be able to play about half it today. We might listen to the whole thing, or people may wish to look it up and hear it themselves. And this is a 1951 recording with Furtwängler and Edwin Fischer. Edwin Fischer is a pianist, a great poet, Swiss pianist, and he was a little bit of a spurious character because he did play in Germany during the war, but I think he was exonerated afterwards, and I think it was all okay. But he's a master craftsman and very poetic playing, and what remarkable is his interaction with Furtwängler, who seemed to be able to read people's minds, and the orchestra seemed to read his mind, because just the most amazing things happened in this performance. There's a lot of space and there's a lot of movement. Now, interestingly, the concept of musical line with conductors like Furtwängler was very much about shapes and rather than sort of a linear concert per se, and you get that sense here that the music is quite sort of episodic and has its own sort of internal rhythm. So you find that the music has its own pulse and it ebbs and flows. And the remarkable thing is that the soloist and the orchestra are absolutely together the whole time. And I think it comes out of mutual respect between the artists, I suppose, and they probably had time to rehearse it well. But you don't hear playing like this, to be honest. It's quite remarkable, and it's heralded as one of the very great interpretations of the Emperor Concerto. They also recorded together the Brahms Second Piano Concerto, which is also equally as miraculous. It's another very beautiful performance, timeless performance. Now, that's the thing with this, I find, personally, when I listen to this, is it's really time slows down. There's so much space. The music moves along, but somehow there seems to be, a spaciousness to the concept. So anyhow, see what you think. You might completely disagree, but anyhow, we'll listen to just the second half of the first movement. I think that's about all I've got time for, and then we'll have a very short last offering before I'll have a listen on Channel D. So let's have a listen to Edwin Fischer, William Furtwängler, and the Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 5, The Emperor, just the second half of the first movement. This is VK3SL testing. We heard an excerpt from Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 5, his Emperor Concerto, played by Edwin Fischer with William Furtwängler and the Philharmonia Orchestra, recorded in 1951. And that's just a part of the work, but it's great to hear playing of that order and such musical space. It's really I find it very involving. Yay, so we're getting to the end, folks. It's almost done, and I won't be back for a few weeks. But keen to continue, all being well, with these test transmissions. There's nothing about entertainment. It's just giving the equipment here a bit of a run and allowing people to test their receivers. And also listening and making critical remarks, often exemplary critical remarks about the repertoire and interpretation. Yeah, that's my line. All right, to finish off, and incidentally I will have a listen briefly on Channel D in case there's anybody there, but we'll see how we go. It's getting very late, but this is very short, and it's quite a fitting way to finish up for the year. It's a recording of Lux Eterna by Elgar, which is actual fact his the Nimrod from the Enigma Variations. It's been sung by Versus 8. It's a vocal group, and it's one of the great vocal groups, really. I think they're all from the Tallis Scholars, or they're a small group from one of the great choirs in Britain, but it's the most beautiful performance, I think. And I think it's a fitting way to finish. So without any further ado, I wish the listener a very season's greetings and all of that. Hope everyone's safe over Christmas, and we look forward to resuming operations next year. So for the next few weeks, this is VK3SL signing with the official music part, and I'll listen back a bit later. Lux Eterna by Edward Elgar.